In this video, we're going to do a direct comparison between 4 different EQs. We're going to use the Buzz Audio REQ 2.2. We're going to use the SPL PQ. We're going to use the handcrafted lab Thermos V3. And I'm going to bring my Maselec MEA-2 into here for this comparison. Now, the reason I'm going to use those 4 EQs is because they're all relatively similar. They've all got Qs, they've all got frequency, they've all got gain. They all work in a very similar way, albeit very different EQs. Only one has mid-side, which is the Thermos V3, which is actually the cheapest of the 4 EQs. We have the Thermos V3, which costs £3,000. We've got then the PQ, the SPL PQ, which costs about £5,500. We then have the Maselec MEA-2, which costs, I think at the moment, it's costing around about £7,700. And we have the Buzz REQ 2.2, which costs around £7,500. This one, which has all the add-ons. So what we're going to be able to do here is directly compare the handcrafted lab Thermos V3. How does that compare to, let's say, the SPL PQ in the next price range? And how does the Thermos V3 compare against the big boys, the MEA-2 by Maselec and the Buzz REQ 2.2? Now, this is something that I've wanted to know myself because I love the Thermos. And I recommend the Thermos to a lot of people, mainly because 4-band EQ, it's a brilliant EQ. It has mid-side and it has filter calves. So, you know, it is an all-round EQ. None of the others have mid-side built into them, so you really do get a lot with the Thermos V3. And I've said multiple times that the Thermos V3 does compare and does compete with these big boys. It does compete with the MEA-2 and it does compete with the REQ2. But I really want to see in this video just how much the Thermos can compete with these. And also if the PQ's got a lovely sound of its own. It's very different. Each of these EQs are very different. So let's now, I'm going to go grab my MEA-2, I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to put all 4 of these into a chain of their own, and then I'm going to set them up. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to set each EQ up how I would want that EQ to sound. I'm then going to go through the chain and I'm going to activate each one and bypass the others, activate one, and really kind of flick between each one and get a real good sense of how each EQ sounds. And then what I might do at the end is do an almost a blind test to then go through and kind of work out which of the EQs I prefer. Now, the problem you've got with a test like this is that each EQ I can set up in a different way. One might sound better in some circumstances, one might sound better than the other. It's very much subjective, and it's very much a difference of how I set them up. It's not like they've all got the same parameters and I can set them all up the same, because 5 dB on this is not 5 dB on the SPL PQ, for instance. So it's going to be a tricky one to actually definitively say which one is best. They're all really good, but my main thing I really want to see in this video is how does that Thermos compete with these well, expensive EQs. So there we have a brilliant comparison between 4 quality EQs. Now, my verdict on it is I like the Buzz the best out of all the EQs. I find it's got a lot more of a smoother sound to it over the Maselec and the PQ. I like the fact you've additionally got the saturation with it. I find the Maselec and the PQ quite similar. They can achieve a very similar sound, and I'm sure if you matched perfectly the PQ to the Maselec, they'll be quite similar. All of these EQs have their own tone, of course, but these two are quite similar. I initially thought that the Maselec and the Buzz sounded quite similar when we were just flipping from Maselec to Buzz, back and forth. The Buzz, like I say, is a little bit smoother. I found that the amount that you were pushing on the Buzz, it felt like more was being pushed on the gain on the Maselec. So maybe to match them up, you could probably turn the Buzz a little bit harder and push a bit more gain through that. Going to the PQ and the Thermos. Now, the Thermos is the cheapest of all of the EQs here. And I didn't think it matched up too well to these 3. I thought these 3 very much were, let's say, expensive EQs. They sounded like expensive EQs. The Thermos, on the other hand, sounded like a $3 grand EQ. It sounded like it wasn't one of the big boys. And that's understandable. Because as well, we've got the Thermos in this chain. And the reason it's paired with our PQ, for instance, is because we've got that quality EQ. And then what we have down here is our mid-side EQ. Now, it's brilliant as a mid-side EQ, but it's not necessarily your single EQ as your main EQ that's going to do all of your EQ work. I wouldn't call the Thermos the one EQ you should have. But at $3 grand, if you're on a budget, that is an EQ that is very, very good. Now, I just had a phone call from Jason from SX Pro. He was asking me what I thought about the Buzz EQ because he literally just dropped it off to me, hence why I'm doing this video now. He asked me, now, if I had to choose between one of the big boys, between the Buzz, the Maselec and the PQ, which would I choose? And I said to him, of those 3, the one EQ that I would choose is the Buzz. And he said to me, is that just because you're in the honeymoon period right now? It's your new shiny toy that you've just got. And I said, no. I said, the Buzz is smooth. I said to him, it's smooth. It's like butter. It's like this smooth kind of spread over the top of the mix. Whereas the other 2 are very, very much, they're a lot sharper. You'll gain that kind of, I feel like you'll hear that yourself when listening to those demos. That's not to say that these aren't great EQs. These are quality EQs. I just feel like the Buzz is the kind of real nice, sweet EQ that I really, really enjoy. Maybe call it placebo. I've just got it. I love it. I'm in that honeymoon phase with it. So if I had to choose one, I would choose the Buzz EQ, but I would also have the Thermos after it as my mid-side EQ, because these aren't mid-side. They can be used in mid-side, but what I like to have is I like to have stereo and then a mid-side. I don't like to have a stereo EQ that can do mid-side and it's either you're in stereo or you're in mid-side. I like to have both, so you've got stereo and mid-side. So yeah, I mean, there's a good comparison there between $7 grand, $7.5 grand, $5.5 grand and $3 grand. Which did you prefer? Which one would you go for? Personally, for me, I'd go £7 and I'd get the buzz. Plus it's got saturation. That's the one I'd go with. And that's from my experience, having used these three a great amount of times, having used this one, had one before, regretted getting rid of it, hated the fact that it went. Now I have one back. So that's what I'd go with. I'd go with the Buzz REQ 2.2 out of those four.